Same old game over.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Why so serious?
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Oh, welcome to episode 642 for June 18th, 2025, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brennan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. This is going to be a really fun show. It's also interesting if you were paying attention to that date there. By the time this episode goes live, you will probably notice a little bit of a disparity there, and that's because we are recording this a little bit earlier because I am going to be on vacation. As this episode goes live, I will be somewhere in the Caribbean.
You will be Jack Sparrowing.
I will be Jack Sparrowing all over the Caribbean.
So because we're doing this early, God forbid no major news drops that we absolutely would have had to talk about on the main show.
Yeah, who knows? I do hope that nothing major happens, but as it tends to happen, I'm sure something massive will drop.
Yeah.
Some sort of bomb will go off. I have no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll just have to wait. We'll have to put out the fires and we'll talk about it when I get back. But I will be gone, so I do hope that everyone is out having a great time. I do know that my people back in South Florida are having the best time.
Stanley Cup, baby.
Stanley Cup is still in Fort Lauderdale. It has not left the building. Still in Fort Lauderdale, and my God, everyone is losing their minds. It's been a lot of fun. And I like Sasha Barkov has been going around to his neighbors.
I saw those
literally
dash
in the
cams.
middle of the night.
Those ring light cams or whatever the heck they're called.
I hope that this podcast is interrupted because he knocks on my door. That's what I'm hoping for.
Is he nearby your neighborhood?
No, I
was
highly
gonna say,
doubt
man.
it. Highly doubt.
That'd be a random pit stop for him.
It would be. No, he's not going to come anywhere near my house, but I thought that was hilarious. So that was really, really
It's a
funny.
really cute way to, showcase how proud he is.
Yeah. 4 of the last 6 Stanley Cups have been in Florida, either through the Panthers or the Lightning.
I mean, yeah.
The state of hockey runs through Florida. The sport, we own the sport.
In the warmest and
wild.
most humid state imaginable is the hockey state.
It's wild, dude. Wild times, the 2020s. Speaking of the 2020s, I guess I will use that as a transition to talk about best of the decade. We had a great show with Adam Kempenaar from Film Spotting last week going over our best films of the decade. I hope people go and give that a listen if you haven't already.
Yeah.
We had a really great time going through all of that. As a complimentary episode, Brendan and I also did a VIP bonus content episode where we talked about the changes to our top 10 list for each of those respective years, which was also really fun. I loved going through those lists and talking about the changes. If you're not a VIP listener, first of all, let me say a huge thank you to our InSession Film VIPs, whether that's patreon.com/InSession Film. Thank you to our patrons over there, Apple Podcast subscriptions, or YouTube memberships. Either way will get you access to that bonus content. So we do thank everyone that is an InSession Film VIP. Hopefully you got a chance to listen to that episode. If you haven't signed up but would like to listen to that episode, you're in good luck because later on this week, we are going to release that to everybody. So after our VIPs get early access to it, we are going to release that to everybody. It was really fun. I do encourage people to go and check that out as well. Yeah. We've also released an article on the website, InSessionFilm.com, that lists out all of the top 10s that Brendan and I and Adam discussed on last week's show. If you just want to go and read, check out on not on paper. I was going to say on paper, but digitally.
Kind of on paper. This for the 90s, it would have been in the newspaper.
Exactly. So you could go and check those lists out at InSessionFilm.com.
Yeah. We had more crossover than I expected going into that, given how many films that we had to talk about. There were at least 2 or 3 that I think ended up on all 3 of our top 10 lists, right?
Yeah, you and Adam crossed over with a major one, and I crossed over with Adam on one as well.
I think it was 2, right? Because I know...
2. Oh, yeah, because we had Oppenheimer and After Sun on both of our lists.
I think all 3 of us had Oppenheimer in some way, just ranked differently.
But yours was in the 10, right?
Mine was in the 10. I think I had it at number 8. But then we also, all 3 of us had The Worst Person in the World somewhere. I think you had it in your
10.
top 5, but Adam and I both had it somewhere in our 10.
Yeah. So I mean, some
good movies,
great movies, some absolutely astounding movies. So, not too surprised that we crossed over in that regard. But I mean, thankfully, like in the actual conversation, because we just talked about our top 5s in the discussion portion of it. And there wasn't too much crossover there, which was
there was some good variety. Yeah. Thankfully, my curveballs help with that by picking something like Disney Pixar's Luca as one of the best films of the decade, and I stand by that. God damn it,
that is a Brendan pick if I've ever seen one. Maybe that's a good transition to this week's show.
See what I did there? I did that on purpose.
Do really love Luca as well. I do think it's top tier Pixar. And on this show, Brendan and I collectively are going to try to figure out what that looks like. Top tier Pixar. What does that actually look like? Because we're going to do a top 10 consensus ranking here. And while that could come off as an easy exercise because they have so many great films to choose from, and you're just going through the 10 there. Brendan and I's rankings aren't exactly the same. And they have so many good movies that determining an order, I think, will prove to be a bit tricky here. I'm curious how this goes.
Honestly, I think it's going to be a lot easier to pick the 10 that we want in the 10. The hardest part is going to be ordering them.
The order. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's going to come down to, is the order, for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. I do look forward to getting into that here in just a little bit. Before we do, I also want to note we had not 1, not 2, but 3 reviews last week.
We were busy.
With Materialist, The Life of Chuck. We had 2 great guests for both of those episodes, and Brandon Lewis, Ryan McQuaid, respectively. And then we had a 3rd guest come on to help us review How to Train Your Dragon with my son, Sam, which was really fun and endearing. I hope people go and check out that conversation as well. So it was a really, really busy week this last week.
It was a lot of movies we had to talk about. It wasn't one of those cases where I felt like one of these we could sit and wait for, maybe on a catch-up episode or something like that. I felt like all 3 of them warranted some type of official review. And we got through it.
Yeah.
We got through it. We made our way through.
We did. We did. And it was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy it quite a lot. Speaking of Pixar, though, there was some news that they have a new film that they are working on. And it is about a black cat. This is going to be from Luca director Enrico Casarosa. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but we just got done talking about Luca there a little bit. It's interesting the timing that
I know, because I called him out specifically when I talked about Luca on that Best of the Decade episode,
you
asking
did.
where he was.
Which is hilarious. And we recorded that before this news was dropped.
I think Pixar was listening. They heard our episode and thought, this is
really
a perfect
funny
time to announce this now.
Yeah. So not only did we get a new Pixar film from the Luca director, it's also about a black cat. So we have now entered this new era of animated movies about black cats.
Yeah,
I
this
guess
is
I'm here for it.
Italian
Totally
flow
here.
is basically what this is going to
Italian
be.
flow. Yeah, exactly. But I think they also said that the animation style is going to be quite different for Pixar. It looks to be like it's going to be something new and different and interesting, which I am here for as well. So,
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Yeah,
I can't wait.
And honestly, the thing that excites me most is the return of Enrico Casarosa. As I mentioned during our Best of the Decade episode, when I cited Luca as one of my top 5 of the decade so far, I called out Casarosa as perhaps my personal favorite director working in Pixar right now, or at least the one that I'm most interested in seeing. Because before Luca, he also directed a short film for Pixar called La Luna. And it might actually be my favorite Pixar short film. Out of all the great short films that they've done, it might
fantastic. Yeah.
It's amazing, absolutely amazing. And he channeled a lot of that same energy in Luca, and I can only hope, or at least predict, he's going to channel some of that same energy in this new film. I believe it's called Gatto, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, Gatto. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. He's returning to the Italian landscapes once again, keeping things pretty close knit from his own upbringing. So I can certainly sense a passion there. Hopefully a movie like Elio does well enough this weekend that proves that people are still interested in original Pixar. That's maybe the other side of this conversation. I wouldn't be surprised.
Spoiler alert, that's not looking good though.
It's not looking good at all. That was a very optimistic view of what could happen. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if something happens with the terrible opening of Elio that's being predicted as a terrible opening, and then all of a sudden Pixar calls all of their original content back. I hope that doesn't happen. We'll see though.
I hope not either. Pixar is aware, I would hope so anyway, that their best work and their reputation is born out of these original animated movies that people love and adore. However, the disparity there is that Pixar is owned by the Disney overlords. So it might not come down to Pixar leadership. It might come down to Disney leadership Iger going, I don't care how good Gatto looks. I don't care how good Elio is.
And that's probably why the marketing for Elio has been so bad. It's been so minimal. And I think that's really the thing that's playing into its perhaps unfavorable box office outcome that we're being that's being predicted right now, right?
Which is crazy because the early responses from critics are overwhelmingly high at the moment.
Are they really? Because I know the movie's currently sitting on Metacritic at like a 60 something. So it's
all I saw was really high praise from those initial. Now that could have just been the initial responses coming out of the theater rather than the reviews themselves, because that's initially what I was reading was
okay. Yeah.
The initial out of the theater responses from those critics.
The reviews that I've seen specifically, not the reactions, but the reviews themselves have been a bit more more like it's good, but it's not great. It's been more in that kind of thing, which I mean, I guess is kind of par for the course for many of Pixar's original content as of late. I mean, actually, maybe that's not even true because I love Turning Red. You were also a lot higher on Elemental than most people.
But I'm not clamoring that as one of the best animated films of the decade or anything like that. I would fight for that film as a good 5th out of that year, which to your point is higher than most.
That's true.
But to give some perspective to it, I don't think it was one of the best animated films of its year or anything.
It's not going to make
I think it's a good solid 5th in its year.
It's not going to make our Pixar consensus top 10.
No, spoiler alert. Like, I do really like it. I do. I think it's a good movie. I think it has some great heart, some poignant messaging that, given current state of affairs in the United States, feels even more appropriate and heartfelt. So, I do think it's a timely film, and it's mostly well done in terms of its romance and execution and gimmick. I did find it clever, but
Yeah, the pandemic
I
really did do Pixar dirty in a lot of ways.
yeah, it
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
unfortunate because I don't think this was Disney or even Pixar's intent, but just given those circumstances, they were essentially forced to release movies like Luca on Disney Plus as opposed to a theatrical release.
yeah,
And then I think they did something similar with Soul, if I'm not mistaken. They were still kind of reeling from the after effects of the pandemic. So it inadvertently created this mentality that Pixar's original content is only for Disney Plus. At least that's how audiences see it. So now movies like Elio start to get lost in the shuffle. And
yeah.
it's unfortunate. So I want the movie to do well. I don't care if I like it or not. I just want it to do well.
I agree. No, I do think it's important that it does well at the box office. And look, it's not tracking to do great. And I don't necessarily blame audiences because, as you noted, the marketing for that film has been middling at
Yeah.
best. It has not been very good. And the trailers that we have got haven't really sold me, not in the way that, let's say, something like Luca, when those trailers
Oh, yeah.
first hit,
I was sold
or
on
even
that one.
Elemental. I thought the marketing for those films were much stronger. Elio, though, I am excited. And maybe to what we were saying on, like, if for those that listened to our How to Train Your Dragon episode,
Yeah.
we were talking about the differences between cinephiles and critics and what we want from movies versus the general audience.
hmm
That could perhaps be somewhat of a factor here as well, because my son Sam, for example, and clearly he's part of the target demo,
Yeah.
he has loved those trailers and
Yeah.
he's really looking forward to seeing that movie. So
Good.
I say that to say, if the target demo is excited for the film, assuming Sam's not alone in that, maybe that will lead to more families going to the theaters to see it. And I do wonder if it's going to be one of those elemental type situations where it's slow out of the gate,
It
gets
blooms
good
later.
word of mouth,
Yeah.
and
It
then
gets
blooms
legs.
over time. Yeah. So that could be the case.
And maybe it will
We
be
shall see.
because, Elemental was sort of a surprise in that regard and how much legs it had later on. And
Yep.
it seems as though the consensus is that Elio is better than Elemental at the very least. So if that's the case, if a movie like Elemental can have those kind of legs later on, maybe Elio will have even stronger legs later on.
Yeah.
If it develops even more of that word of mouth later.
Yeah. And like Elemental, I think its opening weekend was less than 30, which is
That-
about on
yeah.
par as to the tracking of Elio.
Yeah.
So like, because I think the last projection I saw was around, between 20 and 22.
Yeah. On the low end of 20, I think is what I saw.
Yeah. The opening for Elemental was 29.
Okay.
So that's not too far off. And then Elemental went on to gross around $500 million worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite the haul for a film that opened at 30 million.
I'm also trying to remember what did Elemental have to compete with on its opening weekend?
I'd have
Because-
to go look that up.
I don't know offhand
remember.
because Elio is going to have a hard time competing with How to Train Your Dragon for a second weekend.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to go look up the Elemental of it all. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, How to Train Your Dragon. You also have, well, I guess like 28 years later is not really that's counter programming there.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of F1 bleeds into that. Jurassic World Rebirth maybe a little bit, kind of picks at some holes there.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. Superman a few weeks after that. Yeah, I mean, it could. I mean, because
It
like
could.
I'm looking at the summer slate in the coming weeks following the release here, and like there's nothing that screams out to me as like, hey, this is major competition outside of How to Train Your Dragon. There's obviously some big movies coming up, but most of it is counter programming unless you look at it from the perspective of the parents that would take your kids to see and Elio, they're saving their money for Jurassic World and Superman and F1.
Right.
And they're just going to wait for Elio to come to Disney Plus, which
Yeah.
could be the case. Again,
Could be.
economically, that's how most people outside of the crazy people like you and I
Yeah, who go
go
every
all the
weekend.
time. Exactly. Like the normies, that's
The
typically
normies go once every 2 months, and they're going to stay.
exactly. And like I would assume that they're going to want to see some variation of either F1 or Jurassic World or Superman,
Mhm.
or I know what you did last summer for the horror folks out there.
Sure,
Fantastic Four at the end of July.
it's true.
So I mean, the next big animated film that we're getting isn't until The Bad Guys 2, and that's August 1st. So
Yeah, which we probably
or
won't even
Smurfs,
review.
Smurfs the musical.
I keep
don't
forgetting.
wanna
I keep forgetting that
disrespect
that's coming out.
Smurfs.
I keep forgetting that thing is even coming out.
Yeah, I don't want to be disrespectful or anything.
I mean, I will be.
Uh,
No, I'm not going to see
I
that.
know, I'm being facetious. Well, and the other thing too, I forget whose quote it was, but Pixar last year or a few years ago said something to the effect of, we are refocusing our strategy for making movies to make them broader, right? This is coming off the heels of the Lucas and the
Turning Red, Soul,
Turning Red.
Elemental.
Yes, I had Red on the brain, and I was like, "What's the other
It's something red.
something red?" Yes, yeah, Turning Red, Elemental, like coming off the heels of those movies that had a clear vision, whether the film was effective or not, and obviously there's varying degrees of effectiveness there.
Mhm.
But there was that somewhat controversial take at the time. We, of course, talked about it, debated it here on the show about Pixar wanting to make these broader movies that have this massive appeal
Yeah.
to try to get more people to the box office, which is hilarious given the projections that we just talked about with Elio.
This is
But-
literally universal. It's
I wonder if that approach is now backfiring on them, or to the word of mouth of it all. Maybe that's what could save the film. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they knew what they were talking about. I think
Yeah.
they assumed that the cultural specificities of Luca and Turning Red and Elemental were part of the problem, and they weren't. They weren't. I think they just assumed that these were, directors, kind of like vanity projects of a sort, and maybe they misconstrued what they actually meant there. So that's why it got taken so out of context, because it was the wording was bad. The wording was absolutely bad on their side.
Yeah, we'll see. The other reason I bring that up, just selfishly speaking here, I saw that ethos in the trailer for Elio. It looks endearing and fun, but I will admit, I think part of why I'm not as endeared to that film, simply in terms of the marketing, is that it does feel like it feels like it fits that mold. Like we are making something broad here, nothing that is specific or
Honestly,
all that compelling.
If I didn't see the opening logos of that trailer, I would have assumed it was a DreamWorks movie or something like that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it doesn't seem very Pixar-y to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is going to be the new era for Pixar, then
I'm scared.
I am nervous. Yeah, personally, I'm a bit nervous. But that would also make sense to me why the film sits around like a 50 or 60 on Metacritic, if that's ultimately where it lands.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
we'll
I
see.
don't want to jump the gun too much here. But
Anyway, that was a very long-winded side tangent to talk about. Yeah, we're looking forward to this Gatto movie.
yeah,
that's coming
exactly.
out.
Gatto. That looks great. That doesn't look to be broad and superficial.
No,
At
looks
least
like
it
an Enrico
sounds like
Casarosa
it's going to
film.
be really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they did post a little synopsis here. Indebted to a feline mob boss, which hell of a line to start the synopsis.
No, I'm sold.
Nero finds himself forced to forge an unexpected friendship that may finally lead him to his purpose.
Wait,
Yeah.
I forgot about
Sounds
that
great.
part. The character, the cat itself, is named Nero.
Nero, yeah.
Nero. So, kind of, is that a play on words for Robert De Niro?
I don't know.
Is this going to be the feline godfather?
Maybe. It could be. Yeah. Maybe that's where that comes from. Yeah, I don't know. We shall see. I
Okay.
am looking forward to it, though.
See, that sounds more like Pixar to me. That reads like a Pixar synopsis to me.
Yeah. And it looks great. The image they have with it, again, it's different. It's unique for Pixar aesthetically. I can't wait. I
Yeah,
do like
same.
all of the reservations aside. This Gatto sounds pretty great.
I agree. I agree.
We shall see on that. All right. Before we get to our Pixar consensus ranking, I do want to note here because the last few years has been Tom Cruise heavy, right? Going back to Top Gun Maverick a few years ago, saving theaters, saving cinema. He is the savior of cinema, something that Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie took very literally when they were writing Ethan Hunt in the last two Mission Impossible movies.
It's what the movie's actually about. It's a giant commentary on Tom Cruise as the savior of
As
movies.
the savior. Exactly. He is Jesus.
The amount of
So-
biblical references in that movie, absolutely
wild.
astounding.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Glad people like them. I'm glad people like those last two Mission Impossible movies.
I want to see The Final Reckoning again. I'm still thinking about it, man. I'm still thinking about that movie for probably the
not.
wrong reasons.
Look, eventually I will give them another revisit. And admittedly, 10 years ago, I wasn't all that high on Mission Impossible 2.
Mhm.
I probably felt about that film the way I feel about these Reckoning films now.
Yeah.
But these days in 2025, I look back at Mission Impossible 2 and I can recognize its flaws, but
It's an important
man,
movie.
it's really it's a really cool movie that is isolated in that franchise, and I kind of love
Yeah.
its vibe. It's just got a really cool vibe.
No
So
movies
who
like
knows?
it.
Who knows? Maybe I'll come around on the Reckoning films in another 10 years or so. We'll see. As it stands now, not my favorite, but I do love Tom Cruise's performances in those films, as I do his performance in Maverick, which I will go on the record once again to state I think that's one of his best performances ever.
Sure. I can agree with that.
regardless of
Yeah.
the kind of movie that it is. Which kind of leads us into this. So Tom Cruise is getting an Oscar. Finally, he's getting an Oscar, an honorary Oscar this year, which I think is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, because if they would just pull the trigger on the stunt Oscar this year, if they would just move it ahead a year,
Yeah.
he would win a competitive Oscar for
I know.
stunts this year.
I completely agree. We're a few years too late in that. That's the sad thing here. And
Yeah.
Tom Cruise is such a talented individual, whether it be performance, whether it be in stunts, whether it be as a producer. You know, we've talked about that as well.
Yeah.
To see him win an honorary award kind of just sounds like, okay, we have to give this guy something. And I'm not against the idea of him winning some type of honorary award, but Tom Cruise has earned his flowers in other ways, especially when it comes to competitive awards, like you were saying. And I think I would personally rather see him win for something specific as opposed to him really getting an award for essentially helping to save the movie business. That's really another reason why they're giving it to him. It's more of a thank you for doing what you do for the movies. Here's an Oscar. It's basically how it is.
Yeah, which, okay, if you want to honor him for saving cinema, I can empathize with that idea.
Yeah.
But I would like for them to maybe wait a few years first, because we're at a part in his career, and I know he's getting to the latter stages of it, and maybe it simply comes down to we're done with Ethan Hunt. We're done with Maverick.
Yeah.
Maybe he won't have an opportunity to win a competitive stunt Oscar going further. I don't know. The man, he's crazy. He's out of his mind. He's a madman. So I don't I need to see it to believe it. I need for him to tell us directly, I'm done with that phase of my life.
But he's also, there's also still a possibility that he could win a competitive Oscar, even if it's not stunts. You know, like Top Gun Maverick was such a huge hit. Some people predicted that could have been a Best Picture winner. And maybe in other years it could have been. And wasn't he a producer on that movie? So technically he would pick up an Oscar for something like that. And of course he's working with filmmaker Iñárritu in a little
Alejandro Iñárritu.
Yeah, Alejandro González Iñárritu. So it's not out of the question for him to give an Oscar-worthy performance. Like that's still a possibility.
For sure. And we see older actors win Oscars all the time, right? So
Anthony Hopkins,
Gary Oldman,
Frances McDormand winning again for Nomadland.
So it happens all the time, and he could take on a role. I don't know if this Iñárritu role is going to be one of those or not, but I could see this next phase of his career moving away from Mission Impossible or moving away from Maverick and those kinds of movies. And he's going to aim for, the kind of performances we loved from him in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And that's the other thing, right? Like, we know he can be a great actor. We've seen it from him many times before with something like Magnolia or Eyes Wide Shut.
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder in a very different way there. Born on the 4th of July. He's great in that, of course. So we've seen him give fantastic performances before. So it's not out of the realm of impossibility. And that's the other element of this equation that I do find interesting, because I do think he could win a competitive Oscar if he takes on more of those roles. We just haven't seen it from him in the last 20 years all that much. Obviously, he's wanting to do these spectacles, which is why I lean toward, in the immediacy, he could win that stunt Oscar that he absolutely unequivocally would win this
now,
year.
If the 2026 Oscars was the inaugural stunt Oscar, the first time we'd actually see it, he would absolutely win for The Final Reckoning. There's no question.
100% he would win. But for whatever reason, they decided to skip this year, and they're going to do it the following year. So the stunt Oscar is no longer on the table unless he comes back in a few years to make another Mission Impossible or whatever. Who knows? Again, I need to see it to believe it. He is crazy. Yeah. He could come back and do another stunt vehicle, whether that be something else outside of Mission Impossible. I don't know.
Probably Days of Thunder too. Maybe he does his own driving or something like that.
Yeah, F1 does great, and then he gets the itch.
Yeah.
I could see that happening. We'll see. We'll see on that. But I do think you make a great point. And that was the other side of the equation I wanted to bring up here. I don't it just wouldn't surprise me after this honorary Oscar if he also wins a competitive one.
I just hope it doesn't limit his chances, because he has some type of Oscar. And maybe I'm just being a bit cynical about this, but it almost feels as though the Academy is recognizing Tom Cruise's achievements to the world of film and trying to, like Ethan Hunt would, trying to save the industry, and they want to reward him for that. But they also seem to simultaneously see this as, we've unfortunately lost the opportunity to give Tom Cruise a competitive Oscar. Now we can't. So let's give him this. And I hope that's not the mentality, because I think, I think to your point, if we would have waited a little bit longer, I still think Tom Cruise, has something up his sleeve to warrant some type of competitive win, or at least be in the competition in some way, whether it be a performance, whether it be as a producer, whether it be another movie that has some type of wild stunt in it that isn't Mission Impossible. That's very much a possibility. And I hope him winning some type of award here is not going to limit that possibility, because we've seen that happen before. That could very much happen.
I agree. And that's ultimately where this is going to be interesting to see how that plays out, how it affects things going forward, because this Inarritu film, and say what you will about Inarritu, but them collabing, I do think is interesting. And I do
agree, yeah.
wonder if it gives him the itch to make more of those kinds of movies. Not that not that he has to make awards movies. That's not what I'm saying. But to see him tackle more projects, roles, performances that allow him to scratch an itch performatively that we just haven't seen from him in a long time. And I would like to see that. Selfishly speaking, I would like to see that because I think he can do that.
I agree.
And we have seen it in glimpses over the last 15, 20 years in some of those bigger movies. You know, particularly I think of Top Gun Maverick, Fallout, his performance there, Mission Impossible 3, to a degree, Edge of Tomorrow. I think he's good there.
American Made, I thought was pretty
American
underrated.
Made, yeah. I thought he was good in that as well, yeah. Or if he just wants to do like a full-on comedy like Tropic Thunder again. You know,
Well, that's the
that could
thing.
be funny too.
Say what you will about a lot of these movies. A lot of the movies themselves are kind of similar. You know, they have a spectacle to them. But as a performer, he does show a lot of range in these movies.
Yeah.
So,
No,
he's going to experiment.
Yeah, I mean, he can absolutely do the comedy. We've seen him do lots of action. And I think underratedly, because he's done so much spectacle, it perhaps gets lost, but he's really good with subtlety.
Yeah.
A close-up on him, he can convey a lot doing very little. That is one of his biggest strengths, even if that's been somewhat limited over the last 20 years because he's been so spectacle heavy. But it's there, and he's really good at it. Which is why the Inarritu collab could be compelling. Not that Inarritu is a subtle filmmaker. He's really not.
He's not, but he's an interesting filmmaker, and I think he might tap into something interesting from Tom Cruise.
I agree. I'm curious. I am really curious to see how that plays out. But anyway, Tom Cruise getting an Oscar for saving the world in cinema and Hollywood.
For being Ethan Hunt in real life.
Exactly. All right, Brendan, I am going to be doing some traveling.
I'm
going to be international, technically.
Yeah. You want to keep your data safe, don't you?
I need to keep my data safe. And I would, if I was going to be landlocked, I would sign up for Saley in a heartbeat. But I'm going to be out on the ocean seas where I won't have to worry about roaming fees because my phone won't even be on.
It won't even work.
It would be completely useless to me.
But if you were landlocked, you would have to worry about those things, which is why Saley is so important and something you would need. Because normal eSIMs can be costly, overwhelming if you don't know how to use them or don't even know how to remove them from your phone. But that's what makes Saley so great, because everything is convenient and safe for you to travel. You don't need to wait in line at the airport. In this case, you're not even traveling to an airport, JD. You don't have to worry about those things. But you don't have to wait in an airport for a new SIM card. You can avoid scammers selling you fake SIMs outside of legitimate retail shops. There's so many benefits to having something like Saley when it comes to keeping your data safe as you travel.
Yes, they make it extremely easy to use. It's affordable. It's available in virtually every country in the world, right? And if you get the unlimited data plan, you don't have to ever worry about running out of data. It's also built by Nord Security, so your privacy is going to be protected. You can browse confidently knowing that Saley will block malicious ads, help you stay safer as you adventure out into the world. So click on the link below or in the description of this episode. At checkout, use our code ISF5 to get 5% off your next Saley eSIM plan. Again, that code is ISF. Click the link in the description and stay safe as you travel. Get that eSIM. It's super simple, super easy, and you definitely won't regret it. And we thank Saley for their support. All right. We love podcasting, obviously. That's why we're here each and every single week. We've done a lot of podcasting recently because we've been doing reviews. There's been a lot of films to review. We're also doing some prep before I go on vacation.
I know. Let's
So
think
we
about
have
that for a
done-
second, JD. We have recorded like 5 individual podcast episodes in the past, 5 days or something
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
been
when
crazy.
when
Yeah,
you
we
do
had-
when you do something like that, you absolutely need to have a good podcasting service and hosting platform to make sure you can get all of that done and done smoothly.
Exactly. That's why we love Libsyn. We've been with Libsyn from the very beginning. That's LIBSYN, Libsyn. It is one of the best podcasting services that you'll find. They currently host over 75,000 podcasts worldwide, a combination of liberated and syndication. And they have everything that you need. The system is set up perfectly. It's easy to use. They have all the stats there if you want to look through the stats. If you want to do marketing, if you want to insert ads into the middle of your episode, if you want to help monetize your episode, they have all of that.
Yeah.
All of the optimization for your RSS feed or Apple Podcast, however you want to do it. Libsyn, they will make it super easy for you. So go check them out, libsyn.com. Again, that's LIBSYN, libsyn.com. You will get 2 months for free when you use our code ISF. 2 months free.
That's
which
a
is
great
incredible.
deal. If you're starting
Yeah.
a podcast and you have something you want to get off your chest and you want to share it with the world, but you need that hosting service to make it happen, here you get 2 months free on top of a great service.
Yeah,
You
so
can't
can
go
check
wrong
it
with
out.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. If after 2 months podcasting isn't for you, look, no sweat off your brow. It was free. You know? So go
we
check
doubt
them
that'll
out.
happen. I'm sure you'll stick with it.
Yeah, you'll stick with it. It's a lot of fun. We love doing it each and every week, and they are fantastic. They have a great customer service as well. Anytime we've had a problem, they've been great getting back to us. So I promise you're going to love Libsyn. That's LIBSYN, Libsyn.com. At checkout, use our code ISF, and we thank Libsyn for their support. All right, let's go ahead and transition. We are going to now be ranking the top 10 Pixar films. But as we tend to do from time to time, we are not going to be talking about our own individual top 10 list.
No,
although
because
I'm
that's
sure
boring.
that will be revealed at some point during this conversation. But yeah, we're going to come to a consensus ranking. Brendan and I have to decipher the top 10, and then
Yeah, we have to agree.
we got to agree on the 10, and then we got to agree on the order of the ranking.
Yeah.
Which that's going to be really interesting here. So
That's going to be the hard part. So yeah, we have 28 movies to work with here. Elio is, if I'm not mistaken, the 29th live action Disney Pixar film. So obviously we haven't seen that one yet. So it will not be eligible for this conversation. But it's kind of interesting. I'm not going to reveal anything specifically yet, but when I look at my ranking of all of these Pixar films, the 28 of them that are released right now, I think like the top 14 or something like that for me are all quite great to masterpiece level. And then there's a significant drop off. Like it's interesting. I don't think Pixar has many films that kind of sit in that like middle spectrum for me, that it's like, okay, it's good, but not great. It's either quite great or I'm not feeling it. There's not many that sit in the middle there, which makes this kind of interesting. There are a few, but there's not many.
There are a few. I definitely have a few here that I would qualify as that middle ground. But you are right that there's an extreme end to Pixar on the spectrum here, which is fascinating. They could make some really great all-time movies, and there are some stinkers
and then they
here
don't.
Yeah, for sure. But that's the case for every studio, really. When you go down and nitpick all of the movies. All right, so here is my prediction. I think the top 8 will be pretty easy for us to decipher. These are going to be on the list in some version.
Yeah, not the order, but the films themselves.
The films themselves. I think there's going to be 2, the 9 and 10, whatever that looks like, that you and I will debate as far as what those 2 films should be. I think
Mhm.
we'll have to have some conversation there. That's
And
my
I think
guess.
yeah, and I'm willing to overlook maybe my personal feelings on some of these films, given maybe the
Same. Yeah.
impact that they may have had. So, like there are some classic Pixar films, for instance, that maybe wouldn't land in my personal top 10, but because of what they represent for the brand of Pixar, I would absolutely be willing to concede on some of them.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe it might be easier than we think.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I do think picking the majority of the 10 will be, again, not the order, just picking them will be easy.
Mhm.
I'm curious about the last few though.
Yeah. How do you want to start this? Do we want to go film
Oh.
by film? I think that might take too long if we go film by film.
Well,
Go ahead.
let's
Go
just start. I'm just going to start naming some films that I think are easily in the 10.
Okay.
Again, whatever the ranking, I'm not talking about numbers or spots, just in the 10.
I have a film that I think we will collectively agree on as our consensus number one. I think
Okay.
I know which one we're probably going to say is our shared number one. It might not be our individual favorite from Pixar, but I think collectively we might think this is probably the best for this exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Do you want me
so-
to say that film now, or you want to go and name some first?
Go ahead.
I think that film is Wall-E.
Wall-E is absolutely on the list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hands down.
I think I'm predicting that might end up being our number one, but that is absolutely on the list to at least get things started.
Okay. I'm just going to name 5 here because I think we'll agree on these. Wall-E,
Mm-hmm.
Ratatouille,
Mm-hmm.
Incredibles,
Mm-hmm.
Luca,
Mm-hmm.
Inside Out.
Mm-hmm.
I think those 5 are easily in the 10.
I agree.
Okay.
Ratatouille is my favorite. That is in my top 10 favorite
Yeah.
movies of all time.
And the same is said for me, but with Inside Out.
Okay.
So again, we might have to debate the order a little bit, but those 3 hands down. And
I kind of feel like just given how much I heavily weigh Ratatouille and how much you heavily weigh Inside Out, both might have to be in the top 3 at the very least.
yeah, which is why I think Wall-E sitting at number 1 also makes sense because that's a great bridge.
That's why I said that, because that is probably that is my number 2 Pixar film.
Same. I have that at 2. Yeah.
So mathematically speaking, I guess it is our number 1 then, just because it is the most. It's the collective highest of them all.
Yes. Yeah. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we can absolutely have Wall-E at number 1.
Where do you have Ratatouille ranked in your personal ranking of Pixar?
I have it at
films?
4.
Okay. Obviously, I have that at 1, and I know you have Inside Out at 1. Inside Out for me is probably at number 8, but
Okay.
we're still kind of splitting hairs for how great these movies are. But given how much you love that film, I'm not opposed to putting it as high as number 3 at this point.
Yeah. I was going to say I'm very much okay with 1, 2, 3 being Wall-E, Ratatouille, Inside Out. If that's the 3 I want to go with, I can.
At least for now.
No
Yeah,
problem.
at least for now. And then that leaves, I know you mentioned The Incredibles and Luca. I mean, I love Luca. That is my number 3 Pixar film, but it's hard
I have it at 5. I have it at 5.
Where do you have The Incredibles?
6.
Okay, I have that around 7. So it sounds like, mathematically speaking, we both like Luca a little bit more than The Incredibles.
Yeah.
Which might
both
alienate
great
some
films. Again, we're splitting hairs here.
I know, but we might alienate some listeners with that one. But okay.
Yeah.
I
yes, like it bears repeating. Please go listen to last week's show because Brendan eloquently articulated why Luca is so special, why it is fantastic. The only thing I would add to what Brennan said, and I might have mentioned this actually at the end of that segment, we talked about a few weeks ago, the score, the music to that film, I think is some of the best Pixar has ever created as well. So I love the clever inventiveness of the framing device of that film, the music, the characters. It's really endearing and charming. It has that classic Pixar emotional punch. I really do believe if that film came out in any other year, outside of the pandemic, it would have been a box office smash.
It's a billion-dollar movie.
I truly believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, it's still one of Disney's best in terms of streaming numbers. So it's not nothing even in that regard.
Your son loves it. Pretty much every child that I know of that likes animated movies, they all love Luca.
Yeah.
They all love it.
I agree. Like I think a lot of people love Luca. It doesn't have the cultural imprint because of the pandemic. That's the only thing that unfortunately halted that film.
Yeah.
Generally, when people do give it a watch, I think they do come away with some strong feelings on it.
Yeah.
And I would absolutely champion that film. I'm with you. I think it's absolutely terrific.
Yeah.
But The Incredibles is great. I'm not saying any of that to degrade The Incredibles. It is one of Pixar's best as well.
It is. It's going to end up in our top 10 somewhere. I'm happy with this top 5 thus far with WALL-E, Ratatouille, Inside Out, Luca, and The Incredibles. I think we have to start talking about Toy Story next because
I purposefully left that off because I think you and our rankings of that trilogy are different, and I think that's going to create its own little discourse here.
I don't think it's that different. I think it's different enough. Yeah, because I would still put Toy Story 3 as the best one.
Okay. See, I always thought that you were 2, 3, 1.
I used to be. And then I gave Toy Story 3 a rewatch, and I kind of learned to appreciate that as this sort of yang to Toy Story 2's yin, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I still think Toy Story 2 is perhaps the most important Toy Story film, given the fact of how it was made. It was their first sequel. The whole story of how the movie was originally being, I guess, made with the idea of it being direct to video, and then they realized it was actually good, so let's make this a theatrical feature. And then the movie temporarily got lost, and they had to recover it. The whole process of getting that movie made, and the fact it turned out as great as it did, and that it is kind of the thematic linchpin of the entire franchise in some ways. I mean, Toy Story 3 doesn't work without Toy Story 2 at all.
That I agree. I mean, in a lot of ways, I very much do agree. I think some of its own dramatic fervor works great on its own, but thematically speaking, there is a potency to it that works wonderfully in contrast to two. So there is a collective, well, as you noted, a collective yin and yang with that film that's great.
Yeah,
because I do much prefer 3 though on the whole.
Oh, well, I think I do too as well. I like I said, I used to cite Toy Story 2 as the best in the series for me because I do think it is the anchor for the entire franchise. But with Toy Story 3, I mean, it doesn't work without its predecessor. That kind of did all the heavy lifting for the inevitability of Toy Story 3's idea of what it means to say goodbye. But there's something about the way that Toy Story 3 just plays out exactly what you know is going to happen that weirdly makes it even more powerful for me now. It's like the fact that it actually plays up its inevitable conclusion that we already kind of knew was coming kind of plays into this idea as when you're a child, you don't really know what it means to say goodbye until you actually experience it and see it happen. And I think that's what Toy Story 3 is kind of playing with. That's why it is essentially the conclusion of a coming-of-age tale.
In addition to its ideas on being replaced, there's so much to Toy Story 2 about abandonment that is devastating at parts in that film, which I really love. Toy Story 3 just impeccably expands on that with that idea of being replaced, and then it crystallizes with those layers of goodbye as you're talking about, and how that comes to fruition at the end, that nothing will replace the memories you have together. It's incredible. Like, it's really good. All of that to say, I have Toy Story 3 at number 3. Like, that's how much I love it. It is my number 3 on my list here.
So I think we should put it at number 4 then in our collective ranking. I would still take Luca over Toy Story 3, but Toy Story 3 has a major significance for Pixar and animated film in general.
I agree.
I think it's too significant to rank any lower than where we have this current 5 that we're talking about.
Okay.
So
I
just
don't
below
disagree.
Inside Out. I mean, I personally
Yeah.
like it a little bit more than Inside Out, but I'm not going to fight that battle with you given how much you love
Yeah.
Inside Out. I think putting it just below that is certainly fair.
Okay. Yeah, I can live with that. I can live with that
Okay.
at 4 for sure.
Do we want to keep talking about Toy Story? I think the only
I mean, we can, because I do really like Toy Story 2, and I can't remember, again, my memory these days are so fuzzy because we have these conversations here on the show. You and I also have conversations off the show, and then I'm just in a whole nother world with my kids half the time, and sometimes things bleed together, and I live in a bubble where I don't know what reality is sometimes.
Sam and I have the same movie thoughts.
So I can't remember if we discussed this on the show or offline, but like I recently did revisit Toy Story 2, and I do really like that film. There are certain elements of it that I just don't fully love comparatively to the other two. It's a good movie. It is a good movie. Do not get me wrong, but I do much prefer 1 and 3. So like on my list, I have 2 at 12 and I have 1 at 9. So Toy Story 2 is the only one on the outside looking in for me.
On my personal list, I have Toy Story 2 at number 11 and Toy Story 1 at number 13. So really, I guess our only disparity here is that I like Toy Story 2 more than Toy Story 1, and you're the opposite. That's really the only difference that we seem to have.
But that
here.
might not matter to this conversation then, depending on. And again, I think this kind of comes down to exactly what I was saying a moment ago, as far as what these last 2 or 3 are going to be.
Well, that's why I brought up Toy Story in general, because that first Toy Story from 1995, that was the first. That was the first of a kind.
The very first.
And do we consider that when putting this consensus ranking together? We might have to.
Well, I mean, if it was going to come down to a debate between 1 and 2, I certainly would throw that into the debate for sure. Like,
I don't think that's an unfair argument. In fact, I would probably concede and just say, you know what? It was so influential. I like Toy Story 2 quite a bit more than Toy Story 1, but Toy Story 1 has the legacy. It has the legacy behind it.
And like, I would still argue it holds up wonderfully in just about every way.
Still a very good movie.
Still really good. The characters are great. I love its twists and turns, and it's a lot of fun. And I think the animation, for its time, it's perhaps a little dated, but I don't think
that happens with so many movies. That's not the movie's fault, though.
But it's not like, it's still not that bad. Like, I still think it looks good. Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, yeah, and then you add in the legacy element of it. Like I definitely prefer it to 2.
Yeah,
but
I think that's fair.
But at the same time, I mean, because I'm curious to hear the rest of your list, though, because if those films are on the outside looking in, both of them, it might be a moot point. But if it comes down to, let's say, the 10th film, and we're trying to debate and figure out, okay,
then I'd say Toy Story 1 gets the argument. Yeah, given
exactly.
that legacy.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if we're trying to figure out between 2 or 3 films what it's going to be, then maybe that's just the hammer on the nail going, okay, then it's Toy Story.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk about Toy Story in general up front, because a lot of the other movies that I have pretty high on my personal Pixar list are a bit obscure. It's not just Luca. Luca's a pretty obscure one to have as high as I do. I mean, I have Turning Red above Toy Stories 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's maybe going to be our biggest disparity here. I don't love that movie as much. That's one of those middle ground movies that I have here.
Yeah, that's top 10 for me.
Yeah, I have that at 15.
Now, I say that not to say that I'm arguing for Turning Red to be in our consensus top 10. I'm just saying that as an example as to some of the films that Pixar has done that I respond to in a very different way. And I just like a lot of that movie a little bit more than things within the Toy Story franchise,
Yeah.
for instance.
Yeah.
But I personally have Turning Red somewhere around number 9 for me, so it's
Okay.
probably not going to be something that I actively push for. On that same token, I'm curious to hear what you think about this, because I'm not sure if you had a chance to revisit this movie since we first reviewed it. I am absolutely going to push for Coco.
Interesting. No,
That's my number 4.
Number 4.
I think that may have
Wow.
been the best movie of 2017, and I completely undersold it.
Wow. I mean, you talk about a massive jump.
I gave that
massive jump.
I gave that a revisit maybe a year ago. My wife and I decided to watch something festive, and she hadn't seen it before. And man, I bawled my eyes out. I was so blown away by it. I don't know what I was thinking the first time we watched it.
Okay.
I didn't go back and listen to our review where we both liked it, but we didn't love it. I think maybe I talked about how the Pixar formula was starting to weigh a little bit thin at that time. But I don't know, there's something about that one that really hit me now. I think it's a special movie.
Yeah, I mean, I do love its unique inventiveness. I love the heart of that film and how it uses the Day of the Dead to tap into daring themes on death and memories. I do really love that about the film.
Mm-hmm.
The formula is where it does feel a little muddled for me, and not so much the obviousness of it. I've never been bothered by the Pixar formula in that regard. For me, it all comes down to execution.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where there's some conveniences and contrivances that didn't really work for me in that film. So like I have that at 17 on my list.
Wow.
I do its highs are really high, but comparatively to some of these others, I mean, I much prefer many other Pixar films to it.
Yeah, that surprisingly, that might be our biggest disparity of the entire conversation. That's
Yeah.
yeah. I guess I should have expected that. I really should have, given how much I've learned to love that movie now.
Yeah, I mean, again, do like it. And like there are some scenes that in a vacuum, and it is a very moving film. It's a little bit of that How to Train Your Dragon thing that we talked about last week, in the sense that I can easily be moved by a film that also has its faults. That happens to me all the time, actually.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened with me and Coco on that second go around, because that second rewatch I gave it, I didn't even notice those faults, even if I know that they're there.
Yeah. Yeah, which is perfectly fair. And I'm sure that I would have a similar, like I know unequivocally that if I was to revisit the film and I still saw those faults, just like I did with How to Train Your Dragon last week, as I talked about, that film is deeply flawed. And I bawled my eyes out watching it. It was the weirdest experience. Yeah. Would that happen with Coco? And I don't think Coco is nearly as flawed as the live action How to Train Your Dragon.
It's a much better.
I think Coco is a much smoother experience. It's really good. But when we're talking about top tier Pixar, which is what we're doing here, and you have to split hairs a little bit, those dramatic issues that I have, as small as they may or may not be in that film, that would be the disparity between, like, that's why I have it ranked where I do, I guess.
Yeah. So it sounds like I'm not going to get my way with that one.
Well,
okay,
I don't know. I mean, this is where it's going to get interesting, I guess.
Let's
like,
put that in our back pockets.
Yeah.
Let's talk about one that I know will be in our consensus top 10. Up.
Yes, I have that at 7 on my list.
That's fine. I think I have that at number 5, which is probably higher than what most people have it at. I know a lot of people have a lot of issues with the talking dogs and the weirdness of that movie.
Love the
that's
talking
actually
dogs
something. That's actually something I love about it. I like that the movie
There's
is
a
unapologetically
dog
silly.
fight.
It's unapologetically silly. It is so silly, and I actually like that.
Yeah, I love it too. I really like Up a lot. And like, because another thing too about that film, like in its silliness,
Mhm.
And I think, and maybe this is a little bit of what you're talking about with Coco and how you pick up different things on rewatches, which is
Yeah.
why I do need to give it another go.
Yeah.
But the thing about Up, and I feel like the conversation around that film for so long was, well, the bookends are great, and then the middle gets silly. I think
I
that
kind of think the middle's
is,
better.
well, I also think that's an incorrect take, like
Mhm.
very objectively. And I know that's a weird phrase to use on a film podcast, but that film does not forget about its emotional beats. It does sprinkle those in throughout. But I think because there is so much adventure in the middle of the film that those emotional beats might feel overwhelmed comparatively. And so people
Yeah.
forget about them, but they are there again, very objectively. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean it has to work for everybody. That's fine. The bookends are clearly more poignant than the middle section of the film.
Mhm.
But I think that film is way more consistent than it gets credit for. And I do
agree.
kind
I
of love
agree.
the contrasting tones. Like I like normally that could be jarring, maybe it doesn't work, but there's something about the
I think it's a
lightning in the
pre- yeah.
bottle of that film that does work for me.
I think it's a pretty smooth experience. I've always
I
felt that
agree.
way. Yeah. And I think it's a very inventive film. I like the silly weirdness of it all. I love that it embraces that very unapologetically so. So, okay. So we have a 7 here that I think we're pretty happy with. We have 3 more slots to fill to round out our consensus top 10.
And I knew that it would come down to these 3.
I feel like here's maybe here's what we should do. We should start naming a few films that we feel like are likely candidates to fill out that remaining 3.
Okay.
I think one of them is Toy Story, the first Toy Story
Yeah.
specifically.
As I noted, that's my number 9.
I'm gonna bat for Coco, so I'm just gonna list it here as one for our back pocket. We haven't even acknowledged Finding Nemo yet.
That's my number 8.
That's not even in my top 10. What about Monsters Inc?
That's my current 10.
That's my number 14.
Okay.
Is there anything else we're missing that
Well, we've mentioned Toy Story 2. I know that is what 11 on your list.
Yeah.
So that's 12. We're pretty close there.
Yeah.
Incredibles 2 I have at 11.
I have that at number 10, actually. I actually think Incredibles 2 is a better sequel than Toy Story 2 by a slight margin.
It's same. Yeah, I have Incredibles 2 at 11 and Toy Story 2 at 12. And then Inside Out 2 at 13. I have all the 2s in a row. which I am now realizing for the first time. I did not even do that on purpose.
That's actually
Where's
hilarious.
Cars 2? I should just change. No, I have that last. I have Cars 2.
Oh, you have that last? Oh, come on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have it last.
You know what? I'm now realizing this. I don't think Cars 2 is their worst film. I think it's Lightyear.
Okay, I could be swayed on that. Yeah. I have Lightyear at 26, third to last. But I could be swayed easily because I do not like that film all that
That's
much.
bad. I really don't care for Lightyear at all.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Cars 2 in a long time, but if I was to revisit that film as soon as we get done recording here, I can almost guarantee I would find at least some scenes that I appreciate, maybe some jokes land for me. I'm sure there are some elements that are not completely terrible.
I mean, the animation's good. I mean, you
The
get that with every
animation's good.
you get that with every Pixar movie. It's kind of like
Yeah.
shooting complimentary fish in a barrel at that point.
Maybe it's got a decent score. I can't really remember.
I don't even remember who scored it.
I don't remember either.
But
Lightyear, I will say, and you're talking me into it, or maybe I'm talking myself into it because like I get actively angry at Lightyear.
Well, I'm talking myself into it too because I'm looking at my list on Letterboxd right now, and originally I actually had Cars 3 as my least favorite, and then I saw
we go back and forth on that one.
I know,
too.
and then I saw second to last was Lightyear, and I thought, you know what? I think that's wrong. I think it should be the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might just go ahead and change it too, because like I don't get angry at Cars 2. It's just, I just have never I've never liked it. I've always thought it was a bad Pixar movie.
Mm-hmm.
I do get angry at Lightyear.
I do too.
One of the worst.
I get angry at Cars 3 more so than Cars 2, which I think might be our biggest disparity. But we're talking about the top 3 or the bottom 3 here. Why are we spending time here?
We somehow got to the bottom.
I think because we wanted to find something else to talk about rather than try to split as many hairs as possible.
The inevitability. Yeah.
This is going to get hard, man.
Yeah. So anyway, I have we have the twos next to each other. That's how we got there.
That's how we got there. Okay.
Cars 2 not going to join that list.
It's not one of the twos. Okay. It's
not one of the two.
It's in a different number 2.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I kind of feel like at this point now, just to make things easy, we should just put that first. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this. What do you have at 8? What's your number 8? Your personal number 8?
Inside Out.
Okay. Yeah. We already talked about it. And then
my number 7 is The Incredibles.
The Incredibles. What did you have at 6?
Toy Story 3.
Okay. And we already talked about that as well.
Yeah.
So what do you have at your number 9 and 10 then?
Number 9, I have Turning Red.
Okay.
And number 10 is Incredibles 2.
Incredibles 2. Okay. Well then Incredibles 2 makes sense. And maybe even and again, going back to the Toy Story argument, I mean, I will Monsters Inc. I have that at 10. Like that doesn't have to be in the 10. That's fine. Finding Nemo would be one that I would like to fight for. I do really love that film a lot. I think it holds up gloriously. So that's one. And then the other 2 can be whatever.
So I feel like at this point then, given a movie you want to fight for, a movie I want to fight for, and how some of these are playing out, we kind of have a potential top 11 that we have to now dwindle into a top 10. I feel like at this point now, we kind of have to include that first Toy Story just by association, which I'm not opposed to.
So we're looking at Nemo, Toy Story, and Coco. Those are the 3?
Well, I think to round out the rest of our 10, I think we're looking at either Toy Story, Coco, Finding Nemo, maybe Incredibles 2. Like I think given our shared love of Incredibles 2 and how it ranks pretty highly on both of our lists, we might have to play the mathematical averaging of sorts and give that a slight edge.
Okay. I mean, you're the math wizard of the two of us.
I mean, we kind of did the same thing we kind of did that with WALL-E, right? Neither one of us have WALL-E at number 1 on our personal lists, but we both have it at like number 2. So it just kind of weighed itself upward.
Yeah. I mean, I have Nemo and Toy Story at 8 and 9 respectively anyway. I don't know how much that weighs for you. I don't want to be completely dismissive of Coco. It's just the fact of the matter is you're much higher on it than me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, if you want to fight really hard for it to be in the 10, I'm not trying to dismiss that. I'm fine with that. I think it's a matter of, do we want to weigh the averages of something like Incredibles 2 more?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
If you have Coco at 4, though, that's not insignificant. So, like, again, I'm not trying to be dismissive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I need to have my Excel sheet that has this formula in here.
We need actual math here.
Which I do have that Excel sheet somewhere. I don't know where it is.
I did see. This is interesting. And sorry to talk. I know that we're trying to calculate here, but
hang on. Yeah, keep talking.
This is fascinating to me because we've done so many consensus rankings over the last 2 years, and I don't know if we've had a more challenging exercise than this one. And I kind of thought that might be the case here, even though we agree on a lot of these movies. Mm-hmm. Trying to figure out these last few were, especially when you brought in a curveball like Coco, that I did not anticipate at all, really. So it is interesting here.
All right. I have an Excel sheet open that might be able to do some of this weighted averaging for us.
Okay.
So how about this? Read off, what is your personal top 10?
All right. Here's my top 10. Number 1, I have Inside Out.
Mm-hmm.
And number 2, Wall-E. 3, Toy Story 3. 4 is everyone's favorite rat, Ratatouille. Actually, his name is Remy, but the film is called Ratatouille.
Yeah.
And which people confuse that all the time, including my son. At number 5, I have Luca. 6 is The Incredibles. 7 is everyone's favorite grandpa neighbor and Up. At 8 is one of the great dad movies of all time, Finding Nemo. 9, the OG, Toy Story.
Mm-hmm.
And then at number 10, my favorite Monsters, Incorporated.
Okay. So I'm going to try to do a little bit of math here. You might have to talk for a little bit because I'm just going to be sitting here typing. You might have to tell a story or something like that.
Story time with JD as Brendan does math. Should I tell the Inside Out story for those that are new to the show?
Sure, tell the Inside Out story. Yeah.
So, forgive me for longtime listeners of the show if you've heard me talk about this. The reason Inside Out is my favorite Pixar film, and also, I guess this is a great transition, actually.
Okay.
Because Inside Out is about to celebrate its 10th anniversary. Is that
Can you believe
wild?
that? We are old.
Crazy, dude.
That's a movie we saw together. I think we saw it in 3D, and I could see your glasses
crazy.
fogging up from the tears and moisture in your eyes.
Well, it's funny you say that because as Inside Out is about to celebrate its 10th anniversary, I wrote another essay for InSessionFilm.com, and it's going to come out fairly soon. As Inside Out, let's see. Now I have to figure out when it's, because by the time this episode goes out, it might actually be live. I kind of wonder if it's coming out maybe at the end of this week as we're recording. It might be available at InSessionFilm.com, or it's coming out very soon. Either way, you can go and check that out because I do talk at length. It is one of my most personal essays that I've ever written at InSessionFilm.com. And that's saying a lot because I spent 2,000 words earlier this year on After Sun.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's true.
The incredible film that is. But I wrote a lot on Inside Out. And specifically, I talked about exactly what Brennan was referring to there when him and we went to the theater. My wife was also there, I believe. And I had the most profound, transcendent experience talking about Inside Out. So again, you can go and give that a read. Short of it though, the too long don't read is that in 2015, I'm coming off the heels of some arduous challenges in my life. And I had recently overcame said challenges. I had met my wife. We had gotten married. And that whole film, obviously the original Inside Out, so much of it comes down to realizing the connectivity between joy and sadness. Honestly, at that time in my life, this might be naive to say, but at that time in my life, I hadn't really thought about that at all, really. Nothing that I spent time thinking about or pontificating.
Right.
So when Inside Out comes out, and it came out at the right time, given that I had just experienced these really low lows, and then I'm on the verge of experiencing these really high highs. Also, my wife is extremely pregnant. So I'm on the verge of becoming a dad as well. So I have all these emotions, of course, just kind of riling up in me. And then there's the hockey of it all, which I love. But like that moment of joy there at that bottomless pit and she has that epiphany of realizing why sadness is important to Riley. It's a moment that I just will never forget. It hit me in such a specific way that it destroyed me. So like, it was my favorite film of 2015. I would still argue it's the best film of 2015. And again, InSessionFilm.com, you can go and read that piece. I do get really personal with it and talk about why that film is great and so special.
Yeah, that's great. I can't wait to read it myself. So I have a consensus top 10 here, but this is purely based on our individual top 10s. And I think this will change even further if we expand our individual lists to a top 20. Because the way this is worked out here, this is actually very similar to how we do our end of the year consensus ranking with our award show, whether it be you, myself, whoever the guest is. And we usually do a top 20 to weigh things out. So things will shift. I think we need more to weigh here because, for instance, I have Coco so high and you have it so low. So it actually ends up in our collective top 10 now because I have it so high and you don't have it anywhere. So we.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So it's not weighing that I have it at 17.
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think in order to be fair with this, we can't just do a top 10. We should do a top 20.
Okay.
So what do you have at your 11 through 20 then?
Okay. Also, by the way, we are recording this on June 18th. Inside Out came out on June 19th. So my Inside Out piece should be coming out tomorrow, again, as we are recording this, which means by the time you're hearing it, it is available at InSessionFilm.com.
That is so weird.
How funny.
That is so...
We are
Talk about serendipity, man.
I know. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy.
Wow.
I know. That's pretty wild. Number 11 for me is, again, we got the twos. The Too Fast, Too Furious here. Incredible 2 at 11. Toy Story 2 at 12. Inside Out 2 at 13. I have Elemental at 14. Turning Red at 15. Toy Story 4 at 16.
You have it that high? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have justification for it. Okay, fine. You can put Coco at 16.
I was just kind of shocked by that, given the negativity we tend to throw that movie's way.
Yeah. Well, it's just like I think there are good things about the film. It's not that I think it's a bad movie as much as I just feel like it's wasted potential and redundant.
I think,
you know what I mean?
This is how I would put it. I think it's a good movie, but I think it's a bad Toy Story movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So like there's a lot to appreciate in a vacuum, I guess, but to your point, in the context of Toy Story, not so much.
Okay.
Which is why, again, I have it in that kind of middle ground era.
Gotcha.
With Elemental and Turning Red and Coco. Onward, which I have at 18.
Okay, so Onward is at 18.
Onward is at 18. Soul, kind of a middle ground film for me. I have that at 19. And then at 20 is the first Cars.
Okay, so then I guess you're swapping Coco and Toy Story 4 at 16 and 17 respectively, just to make sure I have the structure here.
Yeah, that's fine. I can live with that. Totally.
Okay,
fine.
Let me pull my thing over here. This must be so much fun for our YouTube listeners or YouTube watchers, rather. Me just staring off in a random screen. I'm not even making eye contact with you right now, JD. It must be so impersonal.
He's literally doing math on a film podcast, like in a spreadsheet. It's a good thing he does this for a living. Like Brendan is really good at this stuff, so he can do it quick. If I had to do this, we would be here for 4 hours trying to figure out. Like, I don't do spreadsheets like at all. All right, so Brendan is getting the 11 through 20.
I'm crunching some numbers here. This is gonna make things pretty interesting, I think. So just for context, I think I said some of this already. My top 10 is Ratatouille, WALL-E, Luca, Coco, Up, Toy Story 3, The Incredibles, Inside Out, Turning Red, and Incredibles 2. Rounding out my 11 through 20 is Toy Story 2, Finding Nemo, Toy Story 1, Monsters, Inc., Soul, Brave, Toy Story 2, A Bug's Life, Elemental, and then probably Toy Story 4 at 20.
Okay.
Let's see how this turns out now.
All right.
Okay. I don't really like this, but I mean, it's
So
like
we did all of that to go like, never mind, we're not going to use it.
Well, we might. Well. Here's the thing, JD. The whole point of this consensus ranking exercise is to not rely on math. Like it's meant to be a personal kind of thing, and I still want to stick to that. But what the numbers say, the numbers tell us is that number 1 is Ratatouille between the both of us. Or no, I take it back. Number 1 is Wall-E, and we kind of knew that.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Ratatouille. We kind of knew that. Number 3 between the two of us is Luca.
That makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Yep.
Number 4 is Toy Story 3. Number 5 is Inside Out. So we technically have the top 5, and that was what we agreed on, just a slightly different order.
Yeah.
Mathematically, Up is number 6, and mathematically, The Incredibles is number 7. So the top 7 is still the same. So the subjective reasoning still kind of intertwined with the objective reasoning.
Yeah, exactly. These last 3, though.
These last 3, between our collective top 20s, all crunching together, number 8 is Finding Nemo.
Okay.
Number 9 is Coco.
Okay.
Number 10 is Incredibles 2.
Okay. Look, I don't hate that. Those were the 3, I guess.
Among the 3.
Among the 3, because the other one was the original Toy Story.
That's why I said I don't really like it, because this is a mathematical representation of our feelings of these movies. We're not taking this a step further and giving them added weight based on legacy points. and that's
and again, which kind of simplifies things, because I wanted Nemo, you wanted Coco, and I think
that kind of balances it out. And
we
normally we would do
there.
that. Yeah, we've done that in the past.
Exactly. And then it came down to Incredibles 2. I figured it would come down to Incredibles 2 or Toy Story, because we were both like in a very similar range there with Incredibles 2. But we also talked about how if it came down to 2 or 3 films, that Toy Story would get the edge there. And that's ultimately where we find ourselves, with Toy Story probably getting the edge there with that final spot.
Yeah. Yeah. So and that's kind of what happened.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. It's like, even though there was more of a subjective reasoning involved with how we were doing this initially, we can still kind of eyeball it and put a bit of mathematical purpose to it. And we were kind of doing that.
Well, that's the fun thing. I know that we were kind of messing around. We talked about Toy Story. We kind of ran both on, but the math essentially justifies what we were thinking anyway.
Yeah.
So I like, in the end, I find that fascinating.
I agree. So I guess I don't know if I want to just fully accept the mathematical. I agree. I think where the big difference between the math and where we land on this is, again, I still think the legacy points need to factor in, and that's fine. The math doesn't understand that context, but we can override the math there and substitute Incredibles 2 with Toy Story, which is what I think we should do. I think that's fair. I think that is a very fair way of doing this. So that basically means I still like how we initially had it going: Wall-E, Ratatouille, Inside Out, Toy Story 3, and Luca. Even though the mathematical weighing puts more emphasis on Luca and Toy Story 3 between the two of us, I'm more okay with the way we initially had it, just given how you passionately feel about Inside Out. I think that adds more weight than this formula is calculating, which means, how's this sound for a consensus ranking from 10 to 1? Number 10, Toy Story. Number 9, Coco. Number 8, Finding Nemo. Number 7, Up. Number 6, The Incredibles. Number 5, Luca. Number 4, Toy Story 3. Number 3, Inside Out. Number 2, Ratatouille. And top of the list, Wall-E.
Perfect. I think that's perfect.
We're done.
We got there.
It's the first time we actually used math for this.
I know, it was kind of interesting.
It's actually appropriate given the fact that Ryan McQuaid and I just reviewed The Life of Chuck, and that movie is so pro-math propaganda.
Yeah, I remember you guys talking about that. I haven't seen the film yet as we are recording this, but I am really
so
funny.
curious to hear your thoughts on that one.
I am too. By the time, I'm probably going to get to it before I go on vacation. I just haven't had a chance as of this recording. But no, I mean, the math in this case, I do think is interesting because it's an extra caveat that justifies at least where I was thinking this could end up. And while we ended up kind of shifting that math around a little bit, it makes a lot of sense given what your list is and what mine is.
Yeah, it gave us a good basis to round things out.
Yeah.
And then we can add our own reasoning to tweak things, which we ended up doing.
Exactly. Which
I'm happy with this list, actually.
This
is a pro math podcast now.
Yeah, I was going to say, we turn art into sports every year. And a big part of sports in 2025 is analytics. Yeah. And I am admittedly a pro analytics guy when it comes to sports. Mm-hmm. So I can't say no to using analytics in this way.
Hey, especially when one of these movies, which didn't end up on our 10, but a movie like Inside Out 2 is such a hockey movie. There's analytics involved there too. So let's just say it's part of the Pixar formula at this point.
100%. So, all right. Well, we came up with a good 10. I really like that 10 a lot. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people will agree with most of what we have here. I'm sure there will be some pushback on a few films, but
what do you think will be the biggest pushback? Maybe having Luca as high as we do?
Maybe Luca being as high as we do. I do wonder about the Monsters Inc. fans out there. I think there's a lot of those. But generally, I think it will come down to that or the Toy Story 2 stands.
Yeah.
It'll probably come down to those three films, I would think. Everything else, I think, is pretty reasonable. I know some people will really love Soul. Some people love Toy Story 4 or, honestly, I think that's it. I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of fans for any of the other ones that missed.
Yeah.
Which again speaks to how eventually you get to that dip in Pixar's filmography. But I'd say Soul, Toy Story 4, Toy Story 2. The fans of those films, and I think there's still plenty of fans for those films. That would probably be the biggest pushback.
Probably.
Other than that, I don't think we'll get too much, other than maybe just the general order of the 10.
Yeah, I think so.
But I like it. I think we figured it out. We landed
we did. I'm happy.
Pretty good. I'm happy with it as well. All right, so that's our 10. That's our consensus top 10 Pixar movies. Go see Elio, and we need to champion that film. We need a lot of people to go and see it.
Let's see where it ranks in our list when we get out of this.
Yeah, and that'll be a fun little caveat once we see it and I get back.
What if it actually ends up in our top 10?
I mean, that'd be great. That means
that'd be awesome. Yeah.
And I do want that. I would love to be surprised. I haven't loved the marketing, as we mentioned earlier, but if it really is great, then awesome. Yeah, that would be fantastic. Okay, we'll go ahead and wind down with me being out on vacation. We don't really have a lot of reviews coming out this week. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, our bonus content that came out last week, it'll go wide and available to the public. So if you're not an InSession Film VIP, but you want to check out that conversation that Brendan and I had going back over our top 10 list from the last 5 years, the first half of the decade, be on the lookout for that. We will release that coming soon. And then when I get back from vacation, we will, of course, have a review for F1. We will get to that 28 years later, which the initial reviews dropped today as we are recording this. It's getting some good word of mouth in terms of the immediacy, the immediate reaction anyway.
I will say I've heard a little bit more about it than I would have liked. Not plot-wise, more so how people are reacting to it. And based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like it's going to be a movie for us. I'll simply say that.
Yeah. I saw a few sentiments and I sat there just nodding like, yep.
I kept twiddling my fingers.
Yep.
And you know, it actually had me looking it actually had me looking back at Danny Boyle's filmography. He might be one that's ripe for a movie series because he is a filmmaker that I would never say was really one of my guys. I don't fully love everything he has done, but when I look at his directorial efforts, there are actually a lot of his movies that I realized, oh, I actually do really like that. More so than I really thought. I think he just gets a lot of pushback from me given his Oscar win for Slumdog Millionaire, and I think that's actually one of his lesser movies.
Yeah, same. But it's a very, like, especially the Academy at the time, I don't think Slumdog Millionaire is a movie that would register with today's Academy. I say at the risk of sounding incredibly myopic. But at the time, like the Academy of 2009 or whenever that film came out, makes sense.
But even critics went for it at the time. I feel like the critical heads nowadays would probably see some Slumdog Millionaire as kind of like a more gritty and well-made version of Green Book or something like that.
Perhaps. I mean, I saw some critics that I deeply respect who were rewatching a bunch of Boyle films over the last few weeks, give that one another go, and they still came out positive, even in 2025. So, you know, again, maybe not, hey, this is a great movie, one of the best of that year. This is Boyle at his best. It might not ever be that,
right?
But still a solid Danny Boyle film. And
yeah, I want to go back. I want to go back through his filmography. A lot of these movies really need to be revisited on my side. I'll tell you which one I'll tell you which one I really feel like I need to revisit, and that's T2 Trainspotting.
I remember going for that at the time.
I remember kind of going for it, but not fully embracing it. But there are things about that movie, scenes from that movie, that I think about more than the first Trainspotting.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I am there, and maybe it's just because that original Trainspotting was so heavily in the zeitgeist for such a long time.
It came out at the right time, man. That was a cultural movement.
It was such a huge cultural thing that it's hard to remove that. Where T2 comes out, I really liked it, but it didn't move the needle at all in terms of the zeitgeist, which I thought was a little disappointing, but I did really like it. So the images aren't quite as there for me, but I would love to revisit it just because I liked it the first time, and I would love to see if that sticks again.
I just think it's going to be so funny if I revisit his filmography and I end up liking T2 more than the first film for some reason, and then 28 years later really hits. All of a sudden I realize that maybe Danny Boyle's best movies all have a number 2 in the title.
Maybe. We'll see. I mean, 28 Days Later is so good.
I didn't have it in my top 10 of 2002 when we did that retrospective, and I think that might have been a mistake.
Seriously. Like, I know, like I'm trying to see if I can pull it up real fast because I don't think that I had it. No, it's not on my top 10.
It wasn't in mine either, right? Since you have the list open.
Well, I'm just looking at my own personal.
Oh, you're just looking at mine.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see. 2002. 2002 is the year of Y Tu Mama Tambien and Punch Drunk Love. That was a good year.
It was a good year. I feel like I would make room for it. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. I made a mistake. I'm looking at my, number 7 is where I had Adaptation. Number 8 was Pedro Almodovar's Talk to Her. Number 9 was Signs for me. And number 10 was Infernal Affairs. I would probably nix Infernal Affairs and maybe push for 28 Days Later, now that I think about it.
Yeah. I would, at the very least, I'd have it at 9. And again, I'm just doing this on the spot right now. I at 9, like worst case 10, but I could maybe go 9 or 8. Yeah, I'm probably in that range.
I'm looking at my list now. I think I'd revamp a lot of this actually.
Yeah. Again, that's the fun of doing the top 10 exercise, like revisiting the list exercise. I love that.
This list is wrong. I got this one wrong, man.
like I like a lot of my list, but I would definitely redo this one a little bit. Yeah.
Oh my
But
gosh. I didn't
that's-
even have 28 Days Later in my 11 through 20.
Maybe that'll be the next bonus content we do, was randomly revisiting 2002. Going over that.
Oh yeah, I don't know how I got this one as wrong as I did. There are mistakes here.
Yeah.
It's not glaring mistakes. It's more so an ordering of things. I think the majority of my top 10 would still be in my top 10. It's more so,
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, I have Punch Drunk Love as my favorite film of that year. Right now, I would say it's actually Eat Tu Mama Tambien.
And that's what I had at number 1 at the time.
Yeah.
And I still stick to that.
I think that was a last-ditch effort for me to just have a different number 1 than you. But it wasn't
Maybe.
really a genuine pick
Yeah.
for me. And I love Punch Drunk Love, but Eat Tu Mama
Yeah,
Tambien,
like
that's
I
a
have that
special
at
movie.
3. Like I'm looking at my list, and like I'm not, like my 5 I'm not really changing. 6, no. 7, 8, 9 maybe. I could rearrange those a little bit. I at the very least there's room for 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
So that's an exercise we can do at some
All right,
point.
let's mark it down. Bonus content, 2002
Yeah.
specifically, in celebration of 28 Days Later.
Yep, there you go. I guess we'll do that whenever I
That
get back
actually
from
might be a good
vacation.
bonus content. We actually revisit that movie as a springboard to revisit 2002, kind of like a read review of it or something.
Yeah. I would love to do that.
All right,
Yeah.
there it is.
There it
Planning
is.
on the
That'll be
spot.
next one. There-
Hopefully our listeners love our business meetings.
Exactly. Okay, let's go ahead. We'll wind down for real this time. I'm glad I haven't been playing the music this whole time. We'll go ahead and get out of here for real. But be sure to go and check out that bonus content from last week. That'll be available. And all the reviews from last week, again, we'll get to F1. We'll get to 28 Days Later as soon as I get back. That was kind of what led to that rabbit hole in the first place.
Mhm.
With that, and also just, generally be sure to subscribe to the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe, like the video, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please subscribe to those platforms as well. Leave reviews if you can. The reviews really help out the show a lot. And again, for those that do subscribe on Patreon or Apple Podcast, thank you to our InSession Film VIPs. Your support really does mean the world to us. So, all right, with all of that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the InSession Film Podcast. Oh, man. Pixar. Man, that was a lot of fun.
That was great.